Cam Newton being rushed, being pressured. Newton reverses his field. Got to get rid of the ball. Throws it and gets hammered. And a flag down.
Yes. Wow, he got hammered, dude.
That was a big hit.
I think we're going for the head. He's hurt. There was no place to go.
And Cam Newton rolling around.
Yep, here it comes.
My job is to win football games. My job is not to, to lobby for, my health. I feel as if, it's been times that I've been taking hits, they haven't been called. But that's understandable. And sometimes I've been hit and they have been called. So I just can't point the finger and say I haven't got no calls because I have.
Cam not placing any blame, taking the high road. He's not worried about his health. He's worried about winning. Max, I don't know about you, but that's how I would want my quarterback to respond. Do you like the way Cam handled this?
I do. Whether or not he means it, I like it. He's matured from experience. That's what experience does, especially if you're smart enough to learn from it. And last season, after a very disappointing Super Bowl loss, he didn't face the media as many would like. And listen, was that a good thing or a bad thing? A bad thing, not a huge bad thing. I don't care as much about that stuff as I do about the on-the-field stuff. But he could have handled it better. He could have tried to get his emotions in check a little more and answered the questions more professionally and stayed a little longer. But, okay, it's an emotional moment. And what's much more important is your work on the field, not off the field. But as the face of the league, because make no mistake, Cam Newton's the face of the league. Last season, at the end of last season, ESPN did a poll, 100 most famous athletes worldwide. Now, because the NFL is not as global a sport as soccer or as basketball, there were a lot of soccer and basketball players before you got to the first NFL player. The second most famous NFL player at the time was Peyton Manning. The third was Odell Beckham. The first was Cam Newton. Before Peyton Manning, the first. And since then, I think there's been a recognition that the Panthers will continue to be excellent, that Cam is in his prime, that you can expect more of the same, whether it's not its 45 overall touchdowns and a Super Bowl appearance. Cam is in his glory right now, in his prime. He's going to do big things. And what we're seeing here is, in addition to the on-field stuff, he is learning how to deal with the media off the field. We know at ESPN that when the media is talking to a player or a coach, it's an adversarial relationship in many ways. Our job is to make them feel like the interview subject, feel like we're not adversaries, we're not out to get them. But the fact is, we're trying to make news. We're trying to extract from them something that we can feed on. And here Cam is doing his best not to give it to us, which is his job. Taking responsibility, not coming off like he's complaining. Whether or not, Stephen A., he truly means it, the important thing is he's giving you what you're supposed to get from a man in his position.
I disagree. And first of all, let me piggyback off your last point about the media's job to extract information and, somewhat be adversarial or whatever. That's not necessarily true. Our job is to try and decipher what the truth is, to get as close to the truth as possible. It's not to be adversarial. It's not to be loving. It's to be about the business of trying to gather as much truthful information as you could possibly pull off to give and disseminate to the masses, to make sure that you avoid as much spin as possible. As far as I'm concerned, I've always been of the mindset, Max, that the media, by and large, is not the one that makes things hostile. It's the subjects we're interviewing because they want to give their own spin. And what we're supposed to be doing, anyways, most of us are striving to do, is get as close to the truth as possible, because that's what creates real dialogue.
There is truth in what you're saying. There is truth in what you're saying, but these guys have been burnt by less honest people in the media, and even sometimes when they have good intentions, have been burnt by the media time and again, whether or not they're hiding or spinning. But I'm sorry.
Well, let's be clear about something here. They've also burned the media because they've lied to our face on many times, which has created and elevated the level of cynicism that exists within the media. How many times have we turned around and had to revisit stories we found out somebody lied through their teeth? And they do have publicists and all of these people. Well, what the hell are these people employed for? To give you spin, so you don't give the media the truth. You give the media the version of the truth that you want disseminated. So by mere virtue of their job description, we know that they lied a hell of a lot more than we do. Now let me get back to Cam Newton. Cam Newton, I can respect where he's coming from. I like him, genuinely like him. Had to get on him a few weeks ago. We rapped about it. Everything's cool. Here's the point. Cam Newton is the star, is one of the preeminent stars in the NFL. Roger Goodell has been preaching about safety, okay? A lot of money has come out of a lot of people's pockets. I just had the pleasure, and believe me, it was my pleasure to talk to James Harrison after Monday night's football game at FedEx Field, who has been fined in excess of over $150,000 by Roger Goodell and I. We had a great conversation. Got nothing but respect for the brother. My point to you, Max, is there are so many people who have suffered at the hands of this league because of what Roger Goodell has implemented in terms of safety. And the number one priority is undeniable, is protecting the quarterback. And yet the star of this league, and I don't know if there's a bigger star in this league at the quarterback position other than Brady or Aaron Rodgers, and even that is debatable after the year that Cam Newton had. If you get knocked upside your head, I don't have a problem with Cam Newton speaking up in his own defense about that, because that's not supposed to happen. It's not like you're in a boxing ring and you got an opportunity. You manning up, they manning up, and let's go. He's running, scrambling for his life, trying to throw a football, and you have the freedom literally to assault him, but it's not supposed to be in the head. He is 6'5", 250 pounds at least. He's got a whole lot of body to hit, and you have to slap him upside his head? There's a problem with that. And I think that what's happening is this. Yes, Cam Newton did the wrong thing by getting up because he was so frustrated after the Super Bowl loss and cutting short the interview. He did the wrong thing there, especially after all that dabbing he did last year. But by and large, Cam Newton is a role model. He's a good man. He conducts himself professionally. He handles his business. He wins. There is absolutely nothing wrong with Cam Newton speaking out and speaking up for himself. And I think his hesitancy in doing so is indicative, yet again, of a guy who appears to be a bit overly concerned in this day and age by how things are going to be viewed as opposed to how they are. I don't blame him for it. I understand
let me get this straight.
it.
When it comes to Josh Norman and the way they play that actually affects the on-field stuff, then appearances are important. But when it comes to the face of the league, who doesn't want to be perceived as whining when enough other people are correctly pointing out the injustice of the hits that he's taking to the head and the fact that it's not being called, when he does it, then perception is or isn't an issue. What exactly is? I didn't know it meant so much to you that a Tier 2 quarterback got hit. Apparently, it's a big deal when a Tier 2 quarterback gets hit. I'm glad to see that for you.
If you would zip it for a second, you'll let me answer your question. I was going to say to you, I honestly don't understand what the hell you just asked me. I don't comprehend the question. I really, really am lost. I don't understand the comparisons that you're trying to draw. You keep going on.
You're saying Cam Newton,
I'm telling you, you have lost to me. I don't understand.
Okay, well, let me try and find you.
Please.
So you're saying Cam Newton shouldn't be worried about perception here. So he should say something. Josh Norman should be worried about perception, right? Or shouldn't he be worried about perception?
Yes. Here's why.
Why is perception?
Okay. I'm getting ready to tell you. Josh Norman signed for $75 million, $50 million guaranteed to play a position and to be recognized and validated as one of the elite corners in this game, but somehow the best wide receiver in the game comes into his house and he is not on him. That is not something that can continue. Whereas in the case of Cam Newton,
because he's not the coach.
Hold on, I'm answering it. Literally, in the case of Cam Newton, he is getting knocked upside his head. That is a danger to his health. I would think that would be motivation to speak up for yourself in your own defense, to protect yourself from future harm. You don't understand that?
In Josh Norman's case, that's the coach's decision, but you want him to say something so the perception is he's a gamer. In Cam Newton's case, as the quarterback of the team who will be roundly criticized by many for whining if he says something about it, other people are already talking about it. It's already a point of attention. He does not need to add to that. So the proper thing in Cam Newton's case to do is simply say, hey, I get some calls, I don't get some calls, I'm worried about the play on the field, that's all I can control. That seems to be not only the responsible thing to do in his position, but the smart thing to do. No?
So it's smart not to come to your own defense so you could somehow avoid getting knocked upside your head. And you're comparing that to Josh Norman playing his position against an elite receiver. You're comparing the two. Good luck with that. Good luck with that.
Gentlemen,
we disagree.
Yes,
we disagree.
yes, you do. Yes, let's agree to disagree and leave that one there. We know that all eyes will be on those refs as the Niners travel to Bank of America Stadium to face Cam. They'll be on Colin Kaepernick as well.
Fitz looks left, steps up, fires into the end zone, and is intercepted in the end zone. Huge third down for the Jets. Fitz fires a floater downfield, intercepted by Manny Lawson. Fitzpatrick back to throw, fires down the middle, intercepted. It is picked off at the 40-yard line by Tarpley, and that will put a cap in it. And the Bills are going to knock the Jets right out of the postseason.
The Bills continued their recent dominance over Gang Green by eliminating the Jets from the playoffs in the final week of last season. The Jets have lost 5 straight to Buffalo, and Ryan Fitzpatrick, he struggled considerably against Rex Ryan teams throughout his career. The loser of tonight's matchup will drop to 0-2. No bueno. Marky Mark in the house, the Super Bowl champ Mark Schlereth here with me. So good to have you.
Always good to be with you guys.
When I'm,
you're here alone. I've never got to sit on this part of the table. I'm always over there at the Thanksgiving table.
Do you feel like a made man?
I feel good about this.
Good.
I feel like I've moved up. I've elevated myself.
If you like it, I love it.
All right.
Let's get into it. So who needs tonight's game more, the Jets or the Bills?
I'm going to say the Jets. And you know what? Let's face it. This is what I love about the National Football League. It's always white knuckle mash on the panic button, right? You go 0-2, and what's the percentage of you getting to the playoffs? Like 12%, 6%, something crazy like that if you go 0-2. But here's why I think the Jets need this more. I think it's psychological. Look at what happened to Ryan Fitzpatrick. They were 10-4 in games against the rest of the National Football League that weren't named the Bills. 0-2 against the Bills. He had an 18 QBR against the Bills, a 70-point-something or other QBR against the rest of the league. Psychologically speaking, you have to get over this hump if you are the New York Jets. What happened to you last week? To go ahead and watch that game against Cincinnati, to get 7 sacks and absolutely dominate the line of scrimmage and find a way to lose that game? I mean, you're a good football team. Mentally, you have to get over the hump. That's why I think this is more important for the Jets than it is for the Bills, because they've got to clear that mental hurdle that is the Bills.
Get that monkey off their back. Guys.
I disagree with you, Mark. I disagree with you there, but I love your point about the 0-2, because really the NFL is a situation where half the league, week 2, has a must-win game. And in this case, it seems like it's the same for both teams. But Buffalo's a team playing at home, can ill afford a divisional loss at home. And I look at something like Sammy Watkins playing, Mark, and that tells me a lot. On a short week with a bad foot, they want to make sure he's on the field. Doesn't that indicate that Buffalo's in dire straits, that they're desperate?
Yeah, well, of course they're desperate, because you go 0-2, and I mean, week 2, 11, 12 days into the season, week 2, you go 0-2, and pretty much you're going to be written off. And obviously, you can still battle back. The Seahawks started 0-2 last year. They battled back, but they're a better football team. They've got some clout. They've got some juice. They've got a track record that the Bills don't have, and frankly, the Jets don't have. So that's exactly what makes this game great, why we tune in, week out, why we'll be watching Thursday Night Football tonight, Jets-Bills, because it does matter.
Stephen A.
Well, it definitely matters. I just think that it's and I believe the Jets are going to win this game. I think there's an elevated level of urgency because of what their schedule is over the first 6 games. But what I'd also like to add is that, the clock's ticking on Rex Ryan. We have to point that out. Enough's enough. I mean, he bloviates a lot, talks with a lot of bluster, and it signifies nothing because he's been 5 consecutive years he has not been in the playoffs. As a head coach, you tell me, Schlereth, I mean, how does that look? 5 straight years? You're out of the playoff picture? That's bad, man. That's very, very bad, especially for somebody who talks as much as he talks, brings as much attention to himself that he brings to himself, gets as many headlines as he does for his team, and then hires his brother, who, by the way, stunk up the joint as a defensive coordinator in New Orleans. Now, I don't want to sit up there and act like Rob Ryan can't coach, because once upon a time, I thought when he first arrived in New Orleans, both of you can attest to this, I thought he did a damn good job. But then somehow the wheels came off the cart, and over the last couple of years or so, the New Orleans Saints, they have had one of the most horrific defenses we've seen in quite some time. He ultimately ends up getting booted out of there by Sean Payton. And you land with your brother? I mean, come on now. So if you're Rex Ryan, you're sitting up there, you're ingratiating yourself with players. You got nepotism going on because you got your brother in the house. All right? You're making headlines every week, but you don't win. And, oh, this time, when you're not winning, you have a quarterback in Tyrod Taylor. And Max is right when he says the jury is still out on how good Tyrod Taylor can be. I just think Max left out the key pivotal point here. He's certainly better than Mark Sanchez. I think we can all assume that. And so when you look at it from that perspective, you've got a Tyrod Taylor. You had a Sammy Watkins. You got a LaShawn McCoy. You had an offensive line. You had a relatively decent offense, and it was your defense, which is your signature, what got you to be a head coach in this league, that wet the bed for the Buffalo Bills last season. The year before, when Doug Marrone was coaching them, they had 54 sacks. Last year, they had 21. Mario Williams is a former #1 overall pick. This dude couldn't get out of town fast enough. Why? Because he's an edge rusher, even though he takes time off from plays at time to time, which you can speak to, Slereth. But this dude has skills, has talent, and ultimately, in terms of getting to the quarterback that is, and ultimately you got Rex Ryan asking him to drop back in coverage because you're playing some hybrid defense. There's a whole bunch of questions. So, yeah, we look at the Jets, and we know it's a must-win, and we know they got to step up and get it done, particularly with their schedule. But even though more pressure's on them because of their schedule, and this is a must-win for both, I think we need to recognize the clock is ticking on Rex Ryan. Enough's enough. He's got to show up, and it's got to be against somebody other than the Jets.
No, I agree with you on that. I mean, if he does not show up and they do not put a run together and they aren't a playoff team, especially, and you look at this division right now, you know, you looked at it like the first 4 games, Jimmy Garoppolo, the New England Patriots have to go on the road and play Arizona. This is the time that somebody else steps up and actually grabs on to the lead in the AFC East. This is the time that somebody usurps the New England Patriots and the dominance they've had in that AFC East forever. And here we are, week 2, Patriots 1-0, everybody else 0-1 within the division. Rex is certainly on the hot seat.
Yeah, we thought that door was opening. They shut that real quick.
1-0 on the road. Yeah.
Right? But to your point earlier, only 12% of teams, like you said, made the playoffs after going 0-2. So it's a must-win for more reasons than one. We want you guys to get involved in the conversation at home. Who you got tonight, Jets or Bills? Hit us up on Twitter. We'll share those results a little later in the show.